Welcome to our show, Holding Ground. My name is Laura Richer. I'm a psychotherapist and the owner of Anchor Light Therapy Collective in Seattle, Washington. Each week, I'm joined by another therapist from the Anchor Light team to tackle important topics in mental health and psychotherapy. Our goal is to promote well-being by normalizing mental health challenges. We are here holding ground for you every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. on KKNW. Good morning. Welcome to Holding Ground. My name is Laura Richer. I'm the founder of Anchor Light Therapy Collective in Seattle, Washington. And as always, I'm here with my co-host, Michelle Mooney. Michelle is a licensed trauma and couples therapist, also at Anchor Light. And you can listen to us anytime. We're always here Tuesday morning on 11:50 a.m. Talk Radio, but you can find us anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Just search Holding Ground. So good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, and good morning to our listeners as always. And quick little plug reminder here, you can find a lot of great content on our website, anchorlighttherapy.com, past episodes, an opportunity to connect with a new therapist. So definitely check us out when you get the chance. So Lauren, today is part 2 of what to do when I'm in a relationship that have feelings or attraction for somebody else. So in the first episode, we discussed, how being attracted to other people is completely normal, why we might feel attracted to others, what we want to pay attention to when we do have feelings. So what's the next chunk of this, Laura, that we would like to discuss?
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you might want to do if you find yourself in this situation. So first of all, you want to avoid, and this is hard when we're infatuated with someone, but you want to avoid putting them on a pedestal or glamorizing the situation, but because you're probably just focusing on the things that you really like about them. You're not seeing them as a whole person. You're seeing the things that are really compatible with you, the things that excite you. And so it's very easy to put this relationship on a pedestal when in fact it may not be all of those things. Because again, this is just another person that you are finding appreciation for, but they're a human just like your other partner. Mm-hmm. So notice that, and notice if you're putting them on a pedestal. You might also want to be mindful if you're spending a lot of time fantasizing about them or engaging in activities that you feel like are really a self-esteem boost based on getting some sort of validation from them. And then typically when somebody is having this type of experience, it's really highlighting that there's something that they're really craving that could maybe be provided through their romantic relationship. So they might want to consider strengthening the relationship with their current partner. So that might be noticing, hey, we really don't spend any quality time together. I don't feel like I get any attention from this person. Is there a way for us to start trying to connect more? Whether that's through little rituals of connection, like the Gottmans talk about, just a little time to check in and have a cup of coffee together in the morning, take the dog for a walk at night, or maybe it's going on a nice date night or doing something romantic. But seeing if some of the attention that you're craving or the romantic energy that you're craving can't be satisfied with your current partner.
Right.
You also want to avoid changing your routines and habits so that you can spend time with the person that you have a crush on, especially if you really don't want to risk emotional infidelity and even physical infidelity. Don't put yourself in situations that might be hard to say no to when you're feeling in this vulnerable, infatuated, attracted state. And then think about what a friendship with them would look like, and the idea that maybe you can have shared values or interests without needing to date the person or have a relationship with this person that's going to violate the boundaries of your existing relationship. So is it possible that while you may feel attracted to somebody because you really value some sort of connection or compatibility that you have with them, and maybe you don't have to completely scrap the relationship, is it possible to recategorize it in something that isn't threatening to your current relationship?
Right, exactly. So we want to start to consider the risks of if we take any of this a little bit further. So of course, there's plenty of risks that can come out of a scenario like this. So, the first one we want to think about is, let's say we engage with that crush, right? And maybe that crush doesn't reciprocate our feelings, even if, let's say you take it a step further and you were to end your current relationship to be with your crush, and then, right, they're not on the same page. How how crushing would that be to you to experience? And then maybe some awkwardness, right? Obviously with this other person. So we definitely don't want to pressure this person. A lot of collateral damage can come out of something like this, right? Their family or family, potential work environment, right? We keep talking about the work one, but that is where most people spend most of their time outside of the house most days, but really anywhere. And this should go out without saying, but hopefully you're considering your partner and how they might feel. So how might they view the crush? Or another way of looking at it is, how would you feel if your partner was feeling this way about somebody else? That can be a good indicator of like, well, I wouldn't like this, so I don't want to do that to them either in any sort of way. So we want to think about situations where it might be risky to actually spend time with this other person if you're having trouble managing the attraction. So definitely trying to avoid situations where you both might be drinking or engaging in other substances, right? Then it becomes harder to maintain boundaries. Then some things seem like a better idea than they will the next morning. So really trying to avoid situations like that where, your inhibitions are reduced and maybe some feelings might be acted on in some sort of way, even if it's just some flirting, right? We might not want to get that far. So we want to also explore that how we should reduce our interactions and our contact with this person, or are there certain topics we shouldn't discuss because that's inappropriate. So thinking about those things as well, and if there's some boundaries to be set in that way. If you do believe that there is a threat with this attraction to your current relationship, again, you want to definitely set some boundaries, whatever those might be for yourself. So you are restricting that contact with them and the opportunity to have feelings, even if that's, we think about physical contact, right? But is that liking each other things on social media? Is that sending, messages in a way that, is more than if you were talking in person, right? We're all texting and, all kinds of other ways of contacting each other, right? Is sending this person a friend request a step too far? So really paying attention to what those things mean, because they could really increase some risk. So, and just, keeping in mind that just because you have really strong feelings for this person does not mean they're your soulmate. In the same way as any feelings we have for anybody when we first meet them, right? Does not mean they're your soulmate just because maybe they're checking a few boxes at the moment.
And it's so easy for people to believe that, especially if they're having a hard time in their relationship and then something crosses their path that makes them feel so good. It's almost magical. It feels like this must be a soulmate connection, or it must be that, this is what I was always meant to experience. And in reality, you could just be reacting to feeling positivity after you've been feeling some negativity. And that's not going to be sustainable long term.
Right. Right. Drips and drabs of feeling good and, trying to get that elsewhere, right? That's not sustainable or good. You're right. So how can we start to work on maybe this not becoming an affair, right? Taking this to the full extreme next level, Laura.
So there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to have an affair. And morality is not one of the things that I consider when we talk to clients about having affairs. You want to think about what the impact is going to be to both you and your partner. And some people successfully navigate having different romantic partners and open relationships, polyamorous relationships. And that's all fine because those boundaries are negotiated by those partners. Everybody's in the know about what is happening. And so if you want to have multiple partners and you're with other people that are agreeing to those dynamics, that's great. But what we're specifically talking about are people who have agreed to monogamous relationships or some sort of dynamic where it isn't going to be appropriate to pull in another partner and that you're keeping this secret. And this is going to be damaging to you and to your partner, and maybe even to the person that you're having the affair with as well. So one of the things you want to think about is when all of this is, done and out in the open, how am I going to feel about how I approach the situation?
Yes.
If I have lied to people, if I have betrayed trust, how am I going to feel about myself? Oftentimes what happens when people have an affair, they can't even enjoy it because they're feeling so guilty and miserable, and they feel guilty about cheating on their partner. They feel guilty about being with their partner for their affair apartment. I mean, it just becomes a big tangled mess.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good way of putting it. Is like playing the tape through, right? What happens at the end of this? It might feel great right now. And, something that is a good thing to keep in mind, regardless if it's around this topic or otherwise, is we don't want to make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings.
Right.
So, in the same way, okay, maybe you get angry at work one day, it doesn't mean quit your job the next day, right? Kind of sit
Yeah.
down, think, really reflect, because, right, the outcome can definitely just not be good at all. So yeah, it's a good point.
And a lot of times people have affairs because they can't advocate for themselves. They can't speak up and say what their emotional needs are. They can't communicate difficult feelings to their partner and let them know that they're unhappy or there's things that they want to change in the relationship. And so they try to have those needs met outside. But because of the element of deceit and betrayal and lying, it doesn't feel good to anybody who's involved.
Right. And when deceit and lying comes easier to you than advocating for your needs to be met, definitely something to explore.
Yeah.
Why is that the easier route versus speaking up for yourself? And is there some sort of reason why you feel like your needs are deserving of having attention? So, yeah. So,
I think
sorry.
emotional, when you're feeling a really strong emotional attraction to somebody else, that it is a sign that there's something is off in your current relationship, that it isn't random. I think most people report when they're in happy relationships, they don't really think about other people. They might notice other attractive people and be able to appreciate that, but they aren't really invested in trying to connect with, on a romantic level with somebody else, because all of those needs are being met within their current relationship, or enough of them are being met that they just don't need to seek that out somewhere else. So paying attention to what you need in your current relationship, especially if you don't want to leave, now is the time to address what is going on.
Right. Yep. So yeah, there's definitely physical affairs. We actually have a relatively old episode that we did a while back, and there's also a blog on our website around one of the different kinds of affairs, right? So it's not just physical or emotional. There's a lot of different kinds of affairs that we can have based on whatever the motivation or need might be. So, that could look like, jumping around and having lots of different affairs because, you know what, all those happy chemicals feel great at first, but you're not really intending to leave your primary relationship. You're definitely not looking to spend your rest of your life with these folks. However, right, it can feel good in the moment. And of course, there's other kinds of affairs as well, but emotional affairs, right? That's a big one. And a lot of times people consider this more threatening than a physical affair, right? And there's good reason for that. Both kinds of affairs probably don't feel great to most people, but emotional connection to kind of ups the ante there, because it could potentially mean like, okay, here's another reason why this might actually be jeopardizing my future with this person, right? If they also have this emotional connection. So, when again, if we're not feeling connected in our relationships, we might do this. If we're not feeling safe or supported, and that can look like not necessarily like physically safe, right, but emotionally safe in your current relationship, and maybe somewhere else it feels like you have more freedom and support to talk about all of your emotions. So that could be one reason too. This could be a response to maybe your partner's anxiety or their personal issues that maybe they're not working on. So again, this other, somebody else might feel more attractive, or you want to connect with them more because maybe they're in a better place or they're taking care of themselves. So you also can see this when you feel like, gosh, this person gets me, right? Versus, maybe feeling misunderstood as we can in our current relationship. So feeling like you're really seen and understood and accepted, those are really great feelings. And so that becomes more of an emotional attachment because they're actually meeting some of these deeper relationship or attachment needs that we all have. And it could look like maybe you just have more fun with this person. They make you laugh more than maybe your current partner. And then, definitely we all have different senses of humor. And I think we all can feel like when we connect with somebody's sense of humor, that's a pretty big connection. So, I mean, it could be something as easy as that as well. And so, again, we want to do, if these things are deficits in our current relationship that we feel like, okay, maybe if I spoke up and we talked about it, it could get better, right? That might be a good thing to do. But yeah, emotional affairs definitely are a lot deeper than noticing the person at the water cooler and never thinking about them again.
Yeah. And even if your partner doesn't know what you're doing, they do, because they can feel that
Mhm.
you've disconnected from them. They can feel that you're not coming to them with, whatever the emotional need is. People describe, a lot of times people feel like they're going crazy too. They're like, I know something's wrong in my relationship. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it. And it can also be common that the person who's having an emotional affair will gaslight them and say, I don't know what you're talking about. And that can be a really painful experience for someone.
Yeah, yeah. Intuition, right? When we're with somebody long enough, we can sense when something is off. So, and even if it's not conscious to you, you probably are acting in a way where you're engaging less because your needs are being met somewhere else, or having more excited feelings for someone else reduces any maybe remnants of excitement you had for your current partner. So it's kind of like, well, that's not really something I need or a person that really brings me any meaning at this point because I have such wonderful feelings for this other person. Yeah, so this can show up definitely, perhaps more. It just depends in long distance relationships. So, can you speak to that for a moment, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, we know the old saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder. I don't know if that's actually true. I think absence lets us forget about why we feel connected to
Mm.
somebody and start to seek out what's more in our proximity of where connection and attention and feeling safe and secure is available to us. So I think when somebody is far away, and many people have long distance relationships that they can make work, but you do have to find ways to stay really connected. Otherwise, if you have a partner who lives out of state and they don't call you during the week because they're working and then they just check in on the weekends, it's going to be very easy to lose that connection with that person. There's going to
Right.
have to be a real investment, probably through technology, that we're FaceTiming and we're talking and we're
Hmm.
checking in and we're feeling emotionally connected to each other. Because if we aren't, and somebody else crosses my path that is paying attention to me, and when I've had a bad day, I can call them, and if I feel like going out there, it's going to be hard not to start to attach to that other person.
Yeah, exactly. And the intentionality is key. If you're saying, okay, I want to date this person that lives in another state, you have to find ways that you can connect. And you're right, with technology, it's a lot easier than it used to be, right? We're not sending letters in the mail anymore.
Mhm.
We get to maybe see this person on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it might be. We can have these intentional dates. One that can be fun is, both of you starting a movie at the same time, right? So you're almost watching a movie together and you can pause and check in. But, even if you're not in the same location, or maybe both of you pick a book that you're going to read over the course of the next month, and then you have that intentional connection and you can talk about those things. So there's really ways of doing it, but you have to be committed. I've seen a lot in some clients that have long distance relationships and they fell apart because primarily, right, they weren't putting enough effort into that relationship, and not necessarily in fault of either person in the relationship, but if you're not prioritizing it, that could be a signal too. But yeah, it's a lot easier to maybe have our needs met with somebody closer in our proximity.
Yeah. And, there's so many options. Like you said, with technology, we can have dinner together, we can have a Zoom happy hour, we can talk every day and do all of those things. But another thing that causes a long distance relationship to kind of fizzle out and make other people more attractive is if our lives are not intersecting in any sort of way, we start to feel like we're running out of things to talk about, or there is just like,
Mm,
you're not part of my everyday. So still really remaining active parts of each other's lives is, I think, another important part of maintaining a long distance relationship. If I'm
yeah,
doing something completely separate and your life is completely separate, at some point we don't have a lot to connect on.
yeah, exactly.
You
So some things that we might want to focus on in our current relationship. So when we're feeling disconnected and, other options might feel a little bit more desirable. One thing that can be really helpful is, increasing opportunities to spend time with your partner. And this is something we help most couples that we see get better at, because if we are prioritizing everything in front of our relationship, right, our relationship's always going to be on the back burner. And yet, oftentimes people aren't satisfied with the connection in their relationship. So how do we make time for that? And some people don't like the idea of like planning dates or things like that, like every Friday, we have a date night or whatever it might be. But these things might have to be that way, so you are getting that time together. The thing we don't pay attention to, right, is usually the thing that stresses us out the most. So if we're not paying attention to our relationship, it's probably going to increase your stress and anxiety. So we want to invest that time in what meaningful connection is and what quality connection is. It's not sitting on the couch watching the same show, but you're both scrolling on your phones and not even looking at each other, right? We have to make intentional connection time to show each other that you're still a priority. So trying new exciting experiences together could be something fun, right? When we're collecting more of these things that we get to share and look back on and laugh about or feel proud of ourselves for, that really enriches the relationship. Of course, making time to listen to each other's needs, talk about changing expectations as they shift, because, relationships go through all different kinds of transitions. And as we were talking about in our first episode, those big transitions tend to be places where we can start to feel attracted to other people, because, things are, a little bit more tense, or, just a little bit more challenging as we go through different transitions in life. So, of course, a great place to do all this is couples therapy. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, Laura, in terms of, opening up the relationship and when that might be a good time to do that. So let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so like we said, if you choose to have multiple romantic relationships or more than one romantic partner, that all works if it's within the parameters of consensual non-monogamy, where you and your partner or partners have agreed not to be monogamous and that you have agreed to certain parameters in your relationship. Everyone's in the know, everyone's on the same page. And they've decided that they prefer to have a more open relationship, or to have, their physical and emotional needs are better met with more than one partner versus just a single partner. And for some people, that's an option that really works. I will say that even in ethical non-monogamous relationships, there is still our boundaries. And so the boundaries might be different than a traditional monogamous relationship. But I've worked with partners who are in open relationships or in polyamorous relationships where there are boundary violations, where there is a sense of betrayal because whatever the agreed upon dynamic was betrayed in some sort of way. So just because you have a more open relationship doesn't mean that you're not going to want to consider some of these same things, as if it's that we've talked about throughout the episode. If what you're doing is not within the bounds of what you've agreed on with your partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good points. So just a few reminders as we end this episode in this series. normal relationships, they all ebb and flow. So you're going to have periods where you feel more or less connected to each other. That is just, part of being in a relationship. It's what we do with it, right? If we feel like it's ebbing much more frequently or for longer, then, we're feeling the more flow of, things going well. So, this is just normal. So developing feelings for someone else, doesn't necessarily, again, represent a desire to leave your existing relationship. But again, it's what you do with that. To develop a crush or attraction to somebody can be totally independent even of your happiness in your relationship. So, if you notice that person at the post office, or, you find yourself attracted to somebody on TV or whatever it is, right? That doesn't mean you're unsatisfied necessarily in your relationship. It just means you have two eyes and you're a human being. Something else to keep in mind, crushes don't typically last that long, especially when we don't cultivate them. So again, that's something where we don't want to necessarily be going out of our way amongst the cubicles at work to, grab the thing from the printer that's a little bit further away, right? If we're cultivating these crushes, then they are definitely going to last longer. Of course, improving communication skills to combat negative assumptions that you have within your relationship, advocating for your needs, as we've been saying, really work on reconnection and repair with your partner without needing to have a third person to bring you some sort of sense of stability. And then again, couples and individual counseling, really helpful. If it's individual counseling, it really helps identify maybe some underlying personal reasons that have nothing to do with your relationship or even the crush. So other things to keep in mind. Anything else today, Laura?
I think that's all we have for today. And this is going to be our last episode for a little while. We are taking the summer off. We really appreciate everyone that has listened to us, and we'll be back in the fall. But in the meantime, if you want to hear any other therapy tips or mental health content, you can go over to anchorlighttherapy.com and see and listen to any of our past episodes until we return in the fall.
Yep. Yeah. Anytime a podcast I love takes some sort of break, I'm like, oh, now I can catch up on the really old ones I've never listened to. So yes, thank you everybody for listening. And we look forward to being back in the fall.
Have a great summer.
Thanks for tuning in to Holding Ground. You can hear us here every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. on KKNW. I'm Laura Richer at Anchor Light Therapy Collective.
Find us online at anchorlighttherapy.com.